Hello everyone, welcome to Python if, elif, and else statements. Before we get started, if anything in this video doesn't really make sense, I would definitely check out some of my other videos before this one. But anyways, let's get started. I covered if statements in the last video a little bit, but I'll do a quick refresher. So if statements let your code make decisions based on certain conditions. For example, if your age is under 18, then a certain website won't let you look at what it's got. But if your age is over 18, then you can go crazy. So the basic format of an if statement is if, then the Boolean expression that needs to be checked, and if it's true, then down here we have the code that's going to be executed, also known as the body. So let's try it out real quick. I'm going to create the Boolean variable is thirsty, and we're going to set that to true. And an if statement would look like if is thirsty equals true, then print grab a beer. Quick reminder is that you always have to use a colon at the end of your if statement, and the code that needs to be executed always needs to be indented. So the deal with else is that it will execute the code, but only if the conditions are not met in the original if statement. So let's take a look at that. We are going to create a variable x and set it to 5. And a normal if statement would look like if x is equal to 2, then print true. However, we know this to be false, so usually up until this point, we would get no response. The if statement is not true, and so we do not get print true. But with an else statement, we get a response no matter if it's true or false. So we set it up as usual. If x is equal to 2, then print true. Now we put else underneath, and if the condition is not met in the if statement, then this code underneath the else statement will run. So let's go ahead and try our code. And we get false. We can do another example real quick. So let's say you're talking to a girl and she is talking back. We're assigning that to true. We can create an if statement, and I'll actually write this one. So we can create an if statement if she, copy and paste this. So if she is texting back is equal to true. And remember, in Python, if you're checking if something's true, you don't have to write it out. You can just put your colon. But for readability, I will do it. So if she is texting back is equal to true, then you should text her, hi. Girls love that. With a bunch of I's, or hey with a bunch of Y's. However, we still want some advice, even if she isn't texting back. So we're going to write an else right under it and print just go to bed. Perfect. There we go. We have an if-else statement. Great. So let's test it out. We're going to set it to true for the first run. And what should happen is that it's going to check if she is texting back is equal to true, which it is. It's going to print hi. Run module. There it is. And then we're going to change the variable, the Boolean variable, to false. And so now what's going to happen is the program is going to go, if she is texting back is equal to true, which it isn't, it's going to default to the else statement, which is going to give us print just go to bed. I just realized I spelled that wrong. And then boom. Very nice, very nice. Cool, so let's move on to ELIF, which literally stands for else if. Now you don't need ELIF if your code only has 2 possible outcomes, but if you have multiple, then this is where it comes in handy. Let's say you took a test and you got an 80%, and now you want some feedback. Well, lucky for us, we can get that using a full if statement. So I'll write if score is greater than or equal to 90, then print you are so smart. Okay, so we know that condition is not going to be met because our score is less than 90. So we can slide in an ELIF statement. ELIF score is greater than or equal to 70, then print awesome sauce. And since our score is 80, that code will run. And then you can kind of just rinse and repeat the same format for multiple options. So ELIF score is greater than or equal to 50. We could write boo. And then lastly, ELIF score is greater than or equal to... Wait, no. I almost lost it. Okay, so now that this is our last option, you don't need ELIF score is greater than or equal to 0, you don't need that. You can just write else. Because if none of these conditions are met, then this one will always be true. So you can kind of see how it goes. If is at the top, ELIFs are in the middle, and then the last case resort, else, is always at the bottom. Now here is a very important lesson. When you're using ELIF statements, they have to be in order from top to bottom. I'll show you why right now. So kind of like the original one, when we have if score is greater than or equal to 90, we'll have the code print you're so smart. But if our next ELIF was ELIF score is greater than or equal to 50, then our code is going to pass that because our score is 80 and 80 is greater than or equal to 50, which is bad because we want our code to see this ELIF statement first. The way Python works is it's not checking every single ELIF statement to see which is the right one to run. It goes one by one, and when it finds one that passes its condition, it prints it and moves on to the next block of code without ever checking out the other options. So just keep that in mind. Okay, moving on. Boolean operators. Alright, so Boolean operators are used to add more conditions to your Boolean expressions for your if statements, which might sound complicated, but trust me, it's like really simple. We have 3 to cover: and, or, and not. And while teaching all 3, we're going to use the same variables. X is going to be equal to 5 and Y is going to be equal to 10. What and does is that it connects 2 Boolean expressions and both must be true to have the if statement pass. For example, so if we were to run if X is equal to 5, print true, we know this code would run. And the same thing goes for if Y is equal to 10. However, what if we wanted to print true only if both of them were true at the same time? Well, you can use an and Boolean operator, which looks like if X is equal to 5 and Y is equal to 10, then print true. So our code is checking, is X equal to 5 and is Y equal to 10? See, that's not so bad. And a fun little example would be, I'm going to create the variable I'm thirsty, and we're going to set that to true. We're also going to create the variable I have beer, and we're going to set that to false. So I want to see if I can drink. And to drink, I need to be both thirsty and I need to have beer. So we can use the if statement. If I'm thirsty and I have beer, then print go drink some beer. Okay, so let's see what happens when we run that. And if statement did not pass the condition. Why? Because although I am thirsty, that's true, I unfortunately do not have any beer. And since we have else statement skills, we can throw in else, print, too bad, so sad. Boom, super cool. So that's the and Boolean operator. Next, we're going to cover or. And with or, only one Boolean expression needs to be true. So in the example, if X is equal to 5 or Y is equal to 1,000, well, although we know that Y equals 10, so this expression is false, X actually is equal to 5. So since we only need one to be true, this if statement passes. So if we run our code, we will see that we get true. And finally, we have not, which is literally just opposite of a normal if statement. So if I were to write the normal if statement, if X is equal to 2, true. Now this wouldn't run because we know X is equal to 5. However, if you just throw a not in there, then what we're essentially saying is if not false, which will make our if statement true, meaning X is equal to 2 will actually print out true. So if the Boolean expression is true, then not will make it false, and if it's false, it'll make it true. Sweet, that's all the new material for today, but I was thinking we kind of throw everything we learned into one sweet little real-world problem. Not a real problem for most people, but a problem for people like me. So what I want to know is, can Python decide if I can drink tonight? So I have the question, will I drink tonight? Well, the first thing I got to do is write out my conditions in English. So my conditions are the following. I will go drink if I can afford to go to the bar, and I will also drink if I'm energized. If neither is true, I will steal beer from my dad if he has any. The next step is to declare our variables. So the first variable is going to be beer price, and I'm going to set that to $10. Next is going to be my bank account, and unfortunately, I have $0. Okay, so that's the variables for the first condition. Now let's move on to the second. I will also drink if I'm energized. Energized. Okay, so energized is going to be a variable. And I'm going to set that to true. And in the last condition, it's checking if my dad has any beer that I can steal from. So we're going to have the variable, dad has beer, and he's actually going sober. Good for him. And there we go. That's all of our variables. So now we can actually write the program. So if we look at the top two lines, we have two conditions that need to be met for me to go to the bar. I need to afford it, and I need to be energized. So if bank account is greater than or equal to beer price, and I'm energized, then I can go crazy style. However, if neither of these conditions are met, we can write another outcome. And that would be, if neither is true, then I will steal beer from my dad if he has any. So, ELIF dad has is true, then I can steal. And if all fails, our last case scenario, we can always cry. Okay, perfect. So let's run through the code with our mind. If bank account is greater than or equal to beer price, our bank account is 0 and beer price is 10. So right off the bat, that is false. And with and operators, both sides need to be true. So even though I am energized, this if statement does not pass. So unfortunately, I cannot go crazy style at the bar, but all hope is not lost. We still have the ELIF statement. ELIF dad has beer equals true. Well, unfortunately, that looks like it's going to be false. So again, this ELIF statement does not pass. So it looks like we're going to the last resort. Else, we're going to cry. Let's see if we thought through that properly. Run module. And sadly, we were correct. But don't be scared. That's not reality. Really, we have all the beer we want. Anyways, I hope you liked that little lesson in if, elif, and else statements and Boolean operators. I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget, I love you.